If you were to hear that a child was attacked by a dog, what would you assume about that dog? There are many factors that go into a dog's likelihood of being aggressive towards a person or another animal, not just their breed. Breed-specific legislation, also known as BSL, unfairly stereotypes dogs based on their appearance and should be banned. In a survey taken by this class, 70% answered yes to the question of if they felt that certain dog breeds were more likely to have aggression and aggressive behaviors over other dogs. However, when asked if there should be breed-specific legislation, 80% said no. I have a Staffordshire American Terrier German Shepherd mix, and he does not have a mean bone in his body. However, using my dog's personality for the sole reason as to why breed-specific legislation should be opposed would be biased and unreliable. I have done extensive research to support the banning of breed-specific legislation. Today I'm going to discuss the problem of pit bulls and other dog breeds typically labeled to be aggressive being the main breed in animal shelters, the ineffectiveness of enforcement, and how respected organizations in the animal community do not support breed-specific legislation. The unfair stereotyping of dogs based on their breed is demonstrated in breed-specific legislation as well as in the abundance of pit bulls and similar breeds that can be found in animal shelters all across the country. If you've ever been to an animal shelter, then you've seen how pit bulls make up a large portion of the shelter's population. According to the article Pit Bulls and Euthanasia Rates from SaveABull.org, pit bulls make up a third of the population in shelters, and in highly populated areas, that can be increased up to 65%. People have been influenced to think that because a dog is labeled a pit bull, that they are more dangerous and can hurt their loved ones. In the survey answered by the class, students were asked what kind of experiences they have had with dog breeds that are typically referred to as being aggressive or dangerous. One person stated that I only had good experiences with these breeds. Another stated that I own a pit bull, one of the best, sweetest, and smartest dogs I've ever been a pet parent to. However, others have had negative experiences. One person wrote, I've had a neighbor's dog that is an aggressive breed attack my dog with no provocation. Every dog is different. Some are sweet and wouldn't hurt a fly, where others do have aggression and aggressive tendencies, but both can be found in any breed. The survey also asked when, if ever, they felt threatened when around a dog. One student wrote that I felt very comfortable around a Great Dane who was in the vet's office for an appointment that had an aggressive history. She was not being examined at the time. Animals in shelters that are waiting to be adopted take up room, cost money, and may require medical treatment. Because of this, shelters sometimes euthanize the animals in their care in order to take in more. When it's time to decide which animals should be put down, pit bulls are typically selected due to the shelter's high intake. According to the same article from SaveABull.org, in 2015, the euthanasia rate for pit bulls was 93%. That means that only 1 in 600 pit bulls found a home. There are simply too many pit bulls and not enough people willing to adopt them. When people choose not to adopt a pit or other similar breeds due to their negative connotation, it leads them to just be another statistic. In an article from the Washington Post by Karen Brouillard, it was found that dogs that are labeled as being a pit bull spend 3 times longer in a shelter than similar-looking dogs not labeled as being a pit bull, meaning that the categorization of pit bull is more influential than the dog's actual personality. The stereotyping of pit bulls is not just keeping them in shelters, but it also leads to ineffective enforcement of breed-specific legislation. Enforcing BSL leads to the question, who determines if a dog is considered to be one of the breeds that is banned or regulated? In a 2014 study found in the Journal of Applied Animal Welfare Science, shelter workers were asked to identify a dog's breed and if it was a pit bull. The study concluded that there was a lack of consensus about what constitutes as being a pit bull. This shows that classifying an animal as being a pit bull or not uses qualitative measures that differ from person to person, thus making it ineffective. An article by Dana Campbell entitled Pit Bull Bans the State of Breed-Specific Legislation states that in North Salt Lake, Utah, the city manager has the sole authority to determine if the animal is one of the regulated breeds or not. The city manager is most likely not an expert on dog breeds, yet they have the responsibility to correctly identify animals that may or may not be restricted into their laws. It's very common for BSL to not require any special training on identification or even have an input from a veterinarian. This leads to incorrect identification of a dog's breed. The unfair judgment and ineffectiveness of breed-specific legislation causes it to be unsupported by many organizations. The community of people who dedicate their lives to work with animals is a very dedicated and well-educated group. The American Veterinary Medical Association is one of the highly respected groups that oppose breed-specific legislation. According to the veterinarians at the AVMA, any dog can bite, regardless of their breed, and then they therefore explain that it's determined by the dog's individual history, size, behavior, number of dogs involved, and the vulnerability of the person bitten. They believe that the problem with BSL is not only that it's difficult to enforce, but it also does not address the social issue of irresponsible pet ownership. The American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals is another organization that does not support breed-specific legislation. They oppose this legislation because it's ineffective, hard to enforce, and because there are more factors to take in when consider if a dog is dangerous. However, they also believe that the most harmful consequence of breed-specific legislation is a tendency to compromise rather than enhance public safety. For example, as breeds become regulated, people who exploit aggression in dogs will use a different unregulated breed, such as German Shepherds. Now that you know why BSL is a problem, you should know how you can show that you oppose it. Opposing breed-specific legislation is one thing, but it's important to do something about it if you want to see any change. Write to the lawmakers in your area to show your opinion. Their job is to represent their constituents, so by expressing your beliefs with them, they'll have a better idea on how to represent you. Your vote matters. Choose elected officials that best represent your beliefs and opinions. Breed-specific legislation is a problem because it unfairly stereotypes dogs based on their breed. It affects the overpopulation of pit bulls at animal shelters, is difficult to enforce, and respected organizations in the animal community strongly oppose it. Now that you know why BSL is unfair, let the elected officials in your area know how you feel. Show your four-legged friends that you support them.